This is wild. So I've told you guys many times how my father is Muslim, my grandpa immigrated from Syria, and I've spent countless hours with that side of the family talking about the war between Israel, between Palestine, and trying to explain to them that however imperfect Kamala Harris may be, she would be much, much better than the Trump administration for the Middle East, for Gaza, even for Israel, for everything, whether foreign or domestic. And now it seems like many Americans are going to learn the hard way. Thankfully, I did get my family to vote blue. This is my great grandma who moved from Syria and became a citizen in 2008, going out to vote for Kamala Harris. She doesn't know much about American politics, but she knows that Donald Trump should not be in office. But it seems like many other Americans didn't get the message. I told my Muslim family relentlessly, do not vote for Trump. But unfortunately, the Abandon Harris movement flipped Dearborn to Trump on election day. Dearborn supported Biden by nearly 40 percentage points in 2020. And it's not that Dearborn Muslims stayed home on election day. It's that Muslims in Dearborn actively went out and voted for Trump because they perceived Trump as this anti-war candidate, even though this post proves the exact opposite. So don't mistake this video as some commentary on Israel and Palestine and a deep dive in the war. No, it's more about Americans across the board voting against their own interests, but Muslim Americans in particular. Like, really quickly, about a week ago, this uncommitted Michigan delegate went on CNN after Trump won and began pleading with President Biden to do something about Netanyahu. Take a listen.
It looks like ethnic cleansing. It sounds like ethnic cleansing. It's an ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza and the West Bank and southern Lebanon. And Mike Huckabee was just named as the guy who's going to oversee the final stages of that campaign. And so our message right now is to President Biden, you've got to do something about this. President Biden, stand up for once to Netanyahu before Donald Trump successfully gets away with pinning this legacy of this ethnic cleansing campaign on you and you alone forevermore.
Okay, a few things. I don't know if this dude in particular voted for Kamala or didn't vote at all, but it does say he is a delegate for the uncommitted movement, so he wasn't actively campaigning for Kamala Harris, and that's enough for me to say that this dude is working against his own interests. If this dude is an activist for Palestine or for Gaza, and you're saying that both sides are the same, I'm sorry, but you have fallen for foreign propaganda. Both sides are not the same. We can demonstrate that in 100 different ways, from Biden pushing back on Netanyahu, Biden trying to provide aid to Gaza. I mean, I think Blinken went through a 9-hour negotiation just to get some aid sent over to Gaza when he didn't have to do that. It's because the Biden administration actually cares. And let's compare that to what Donald Trump posted on Truth Social today. So again, if we back up, a lot of Muslims saw Trump as the guy who would finally shake up the system, this anti-war candidate who wasn't like any other politicians, Democratic or Republican politicians. That's why they voted for him. They think that he is somebody who is outside the system, but he's not that much different from every other. He's not really that much different from Bush. He's threatening to raise hell in the Middle East. And keep a few things in mind. Number one, this dude isn't even in power yet, so he's just all talk. Number two, he's trying to play this tough guy persona and set an ultimatum for Hamas, but Hamas is a terrorist organization. They inherently don't care. They don't play by the same rules that, say, Trudeau would. Trudeau gets spooked easily. Hamas terrorists are just terrible. And number three, he's talking about the hostages here. We're all on the same page. We all want the hostages to come back. That's not what this commentary is about. It's more about Trump's terrible way of doing it. So let's read this. He said, everybody is talking about the hostages who are being held so violently, inhumanely, and against the will of the entire world in the Middle East. But it's all talk and no action. Please let this truth serve to represent that if the hostages are not released prior to January 20th of 2025, the date that I proudly assume office as President of the United States, there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East, and for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity. Those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America. Release the hostages now. They'll be hit harder than anybody has ever been hit. Are you saying you're going to nuke the Middle East in the same way that we nuked Hiroshima or Nagasaki? There's just so much wrong with this, but we can start with this. He says it's all talk and no action as he releases a Truth Social post. The next line says, please let this truth serve to represent. So you think that your Truth Social post, when you're not even in power, is actually action when everybody else is just doing talk? I mean, Blinken has gone through days of negotiation. I don't just mean like day after day. I mean 24 hours after 24 hours of negotiation trying to get something done, it is not that easy when you're negotiating with terrorists. At the same time, Donald Trump is doubling down on this rhetoric, saying things like, all hell will be to pay, trying to escalate tensions with Iran, trying to give a blank check to Israel to do whatever they want in Palestine, which is far from being the anti-war president. And really quickly, Iran is our enemy. Don't misconstrue any of this as me being pro-Iran. I'm just saying Donald Trump going in and relentlessly bombing Iran doesn't really line up with how he campaigned as no new wars, no new wars. Every single day he said no new wars, and then he just tweeted out, there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East and for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity. So what does that even mean? Is he talking about leveling every single building in Gaza? That's the only thing that could beat what we've done in our history with Japan. And also, as far as I can see, Gaza is basically a cleanup operation at this point. I mean, most of Hamas leadership has been decimated. They are still in place. The hostages do need to come home, but Israel has achieved the vast majority of its military goals. So what is Trump suggesting? Just turning it into a wasteland so that he could posture on Truth Social? And I know that Trump uses this hyperbolic rhetoric all the time. You can even see the salesman language right here. They'll be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history. But even if he is using his salesman rhetoric or setting the stage for a deal, like the MAGA supporters will say, this is irresponsible, and this kind of talk escalates tensions beyond what is necessary at all, and no progress will be made. I mean, I really want the hostages to come home, but I also think Trump is going to get a massive reality check here when he realizes around January 27th, a week after he takes office, that most of his promises of bringing peace to the Middle East don't work that way. We've been trying to bring peace to the Middle East for like 40 years now. I mean, Israel-Palestine's been going on since the 1940s, so the idea that Donald Trump is going to be able to come in here and end it within week one is actually really funny. But again, this video isn't just about Trump. It's about all of the Muslims in America. It's not even just about the Muslims in America. It's about the libertarians who thought that Trump was going to be this anti-war president. These people who are so anti-establishment, they think that Nikki Haley loves war. Well, Donald Trump is talking exactly like Nikki Haley here. I mean, even Nikki Haley probably wouldn't tweet out all hell to pay in all caps if she would have won the election somehow. But I'm just thinking about all of the Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan who cast their vote for Donald Trump thinking he would fight this deep state or stand up to the military-industrial complex and bring an end to these endless wars. And instead, he immediately gave us more of the same, more bombs, more threats towards the Middle East, more empty promises before he even got into office. And I think that Hamas needs to be obliterated, needs to be decimated. But Donald Trump sending out a Truth Social post, literally just saying there will be all hell to pay if you guys don't do what President Biden has been working for over a year on. It's incredibly naive. And listen, if the hostages somehow come home before January 20th because of this Truth Social post, then props to Donald Trump. But I just see Hamas as this inherently irrational movement that doesn't even want to negotiate. They just want the destruction of Israel. And if you're not going to give them that, then there's nothing to negotiate. And Trump is going to learn that very quickly. So I'm curious to see where he'll go with this. I mean, from Trump's point of view, if we step into his point of view, what he's trying to do here is use his normal strongman rhetoric and make it seem like he's incredibly crazy and will pull the trigger on bombing the Middle East or putting tariffs on Canada and Mexico, for example. This is all just bluster. This is all just tough talk to make it seem like he will do all of this stuff. He will execute on bombs in the Middle East, but I don't think he will. I do not think he actually has the balls. I think it is all actual bluster. I guess we'll see. Drop a like, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one, and peace out.